Have you ever struggled to manage your time in the way that you really want to when you have a lot on your mind and a lot on your heart? Like your heart maybe feels a little bit heavy just because of things going on. That is something that I resonate with deeply. In fact, Evergreen Planner at the very, very beginning, the very first worksheets I ever created, which of course there's so much more to the story, especially once my sister gets in, but the very first worksheets I created came from me trying to figure out how to manage my time well, even with just so much on my mind and heart, because just in my life that has been a reality because of just so many different circumstances. We all know that brain fog is a special feature of, when we have too much stress and anxiety internally. We might even be able to look at our circumstances and say, like, right now, everything is a lot better than what my anxiety levels are, right? And that is how my life is right now. My life is so blessed. But this week especially, so two things happened this week. One, I workshop, and it was just so good, and it really dove deep into what is happening in your brain when you are feeling stress. And it was just so helpful to remember how powering through is not always the answer. Just ignoring the stress and trying to pretend like it's not there, it builds up, and at some point you have to deal with it, right? And so I've been really thinking that through and praying about that, and praying about like the rhythms of rest that are needed in order to handle that and just steward that reality that is in all of our lives well, right? And I've also, something that happened this week is that I have been paying attention to the news more than usual. I like never pay attention to the news, like as a principle, but there was something specific in the news that I wanted to follow, and so I was partaking of it a lot more last week. And it caused me to think about how overstimulation is such a big part of our lives right now, because we have the world in our pockets, right? And even when we're not actively scrolling, looking at our phones, looking at our computers, we still have everything that we took in to process when we don't have that in our hands, and that just stays on our mind, and our brains are just trying to process it. I read somewhere in a paper that we take in more in one day than a highly educated person in the medieval period took in their lifetime. Like, that's crazy. And it's just because of all the words and the noises and the things to react to, the things to care about are just constantly coming into our minds and into our hearts, and that impacts things. It's part of being created in the image of God for us to care, right? And it's not wrong to care. It's good to care about what's going on in the world. It's good to care about the future and the health of our communities and things like that. That's all good, and it's part of what we were created to do. So how do we how do we solve that problem? How do we care deeply but still have the appropriate brain space and heart space and peace available to be able to apply ourselves to things that we can actually do something about, right? How do we hold those things in tension? How do we understand and embrace the fact that we're limited creatures? The first thing, of course, is prayer. Talking to the one who is not limited. He is the God of the universe. He is our Father. He loves us. He cares more deeply about the things that we are anxious about than we ever could. And he calls us not to be anxious, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let our requests be made known unto him, and that his peace will pass all understanding. We know these things, right? Okay. In addition, or in that posture, now we pray, but we also must apply what we know, right? Wisdom, virtue. So what do we do with that? What is the wisdom here? And I've been thinking a lot about this. And And I like to think about how God knows that we are limited. He knew when he created us that we would be able to see all of these things, but only be able to have impact on a very small number of them, right? And it is our responsibility, it is a part of applying wisdom for us to sort that out, to seek more wisdom and more light about that, and to apply ourselves with diligence to what we can impact and what we can change. And that is the heart of Evergreen Planner, is to help as many women as we can to get all of that sorted out using this beautiful tool that helps you think it through. So we do more than just sell planners here. We are a time management company, a Christian time management company. So we tackle things that Christians care about that really impact how they spend their time, how we go about our productive lives, right? And one of the things that we have is the Rooted Goals workbook, and we address these types of issues in the Rooted Goals workbook, and we love using this diagram. We call the circles of influence. It's actually something that I was taught by a local mentor, and we put it in here to share that with other people because it has helped me in my life so much, and it's helped our whole team. But you always start with the most important, the most core circle, and you build from there. You know, it's really easy in our social media age to think that we can have this huge impact in the global community just by posting and, you know, jumping on global issues and all of that. But I mean, there might be a time for that, like 5 minutes out of your week, maybe. But honestly, that's not going to change much. Imagine impact that starts like this. It starts with your communion with God as your core circle, and you are at peace with the Lord. You understand what his will is, what he is guiding you to do, and you are obedient to that. And that posture towards the Lord flows into your next circle, which is your home and your work. And as you're faithful in your home and in your work, that faithfulness builds strong relationships, and it also builds your skill set. It builds your ability to create value and add value to situations, to solve problems. And I think honestly, okay, let's just stick with that for a second. Problem solving is such a big part of our responsibility as image bearers. Such a big part. But the problem is that we often give our brains so many problems to solve through, you know, consuming everything going on in the world, consuming all these problems to solve. But our brains know we cannot solve those problems. They're too big. They're too complex, and they're not things that we are uniquely positioned to influence. You know, we have our spheres. We have our husbands and our children and our co-workers. But for us to handle these relationships well, for us to do good towards others consistently, to show up with the right attitude and with true love, honestly, flowing out towards people, flowing out through the work that we are doing, that love has to be coming from somewhere, and it can't come from us, right? We know that. We get tapped out so fast. It has to come from our consistent time with the Lord first, right? And then we do need to be faithful in the day in and day out of doing the work that God has called us to do. And from there, we can build on the strong foundations of our homes and our, responsible lives to impact, and have these relationships with friends in our local churches, and build from there into our community and outreach, and that influence can continue to grow in over a lifetime, right? And it's up to the Lord what he wants our influence, our impact to be like, what he wants our legacy to be, right? But it starts with being faithful with little. right? And we know that that's what the scripture says, be faithful with little first. And what is smaller than how we spend our minutes? You know, I am wanting to start this habit, and I have today. I'm excited about it. I'm still working through the Rooted Goals workbook right now for this next quarter. I am not following the traditional quarters, goal setting quarters, because I have to help people set their goals during, that. So I am doing Rooted Goals in my life right now. And I am looking at doing this habit goal. I'm trying it out today, where every time I go to get on social media, instead I spend time in the Word. Then the Rooted Goal, something like that, would be called a habit goal. But that goal was inspired by just, thinking about the circles of influence again, and thinking about just different things that I have been needing to face and overcome, problems I need to solve in my life, and looking at, okay, I'm not coming up with a strategy to solve these problems really well, and I always, that's like my thing, is strategizing to solve problems. I'm not coming up with a strategy. What's going on? Why am I not just having this strategy so clear to me on how to solve these particular problems that are cropping up in my home life or in my work life and different things? And I realized it was because how I show up in those areas comes from how I am with the Lord, and the peace that I have with Him, and how much I'm growing spiritually. And it's not always that more time, quiet time, is always the answer. If your house is always messy, getting up and washing your dishes consistently is probably the answer, right? Those types of things. But that's what this helped me to do, was to identify the breakdown. And my husband kept telling me this. It's like, Shelby, the issues going on here, it's not a time management problem. Like, you have done every time management strategy possible to solve these problems. You need to be looking in a different area. And he was telling me that. And that was so helpful for me to consider that and say, okay, then what is the problem? What's the root of these things? And this helped me to figure that out. And for me, I was needing to have more consistent time in the Word, but not like as a checklist item. I needed to be bringing the deep things, the hard things, to the Lord specifically, and I needed to be drawing near to Him in those. And that takes more than, even just saying, here's my section where I am spending time with the Lord every day faithfully. At least for me right now, it's the issues are taking more, and there's a pressing in that's needed. And so, I have my week audit, and that's super helpful, helping me to, even have space to do my consistent quiet time. But the habit goal is going to help me to press in with those things that social media wants to distract me from even thinking about. So that's my encouragement. I'm sure I have done the whole, too many stories thing. I've been told not to do that so many times, but this is just really important, and I wanted to talk about it and encourage you guys that, all of this time management stuff is really helpful. It's really helpful for you tackling problems, solving problems, leaning into your responsibility as an image bearer to do those things. And also, we need to be careful about how much we are just continuing to dump into our brains. And we need to be turning to the one who holds all things, holds it all together, and be asking Him, what do you want me to be doing today? How can I pour in daily small faithfulnesses to honor you in the particular work that you have called me to do? And help me to have vision, help me to see how, folding my laundry, sharing content on social media, because that was the next task for the business, sitting down and doing a math lesson with my child, or having that hard conversation with a coworker. help me to see how those daily small faithfulnesses are flowing into what you are doing in the world. That's my prayer right now. To not get distracted by the noise and think that just by me knowing all this stuff, it's going to change everything. Knowing to a degree is helpful, but we need to be doing faithfully with peace and with confidence in Him.